In Idries Shah's The Commanding Self, he has a couple passages which, to my untrained eye, felt like they came out of nowhere on almost. And he talks about symbols, especially the enneagon, which is otherwise known as a nonagon. And
The enneagram.
right, right. And the different representations it can show up in, um, and its importance, but he can't go too deeply into it because this is a question and answer format and it would take a lot more to
Yes,
go
it would.
through
It'd
it.
take a lot more, including mathematics and including uh, the use of the rationale for certain numbers being considered mystical. Well, I can just briefly. If you look at the octave, it's made of 7 notes, and then the octave, that's 8, right? Well, those harmonics, and also there's divisions, I think, between the third and the fifth, right, in music. Now, why aren't the notes equally spaced? Well, they're not equally spaced because that's not harmonious, it's not harmonic. And just like we see many mathematical properties of plants, the golden ratio, the golden section, the basis of these beautiful flowers and all this other stuff. Well, analogously, we see that this division of 8 with spaces between, I think it's the third and the fifth. I don't know. I'm not an expert on it. But why is that? Why would we find that musically harmonious? And we aren't the only ones, by the way. And so then you look deeper at that, and you see that there's a relationship, and there's a whole, and there's a period. It goes. Yeah, he's right. You go on and on forever. And so, for example, the octagon and the pentagram are related to each other in a very sophisticated way. And these things have, these were studied in a time before, we threw all of this stuff out with the Enlightenment. The other problem, of course, is that it's been grossly popularized. And but if you want the good root sources in contemporary English, it would be Ochoa, a brilliant kind of, I think he's Chilean, is one person, and the other one is Navarro, is it, or something like that. Anyway, there are books on this, but it's duck soup. The further people get away, it's like the Tarot, also, right? It's the roots of it are not understood, right? Just like the names of the constellation, we don't understand where those come from, but the evidence. I mean, the data is right there, right? But we have to overcome our prejudice against Muslims and Islam in order to get to that, or they're gracious enough and generous enough to share it with us by translating it. And a lot of this hasn't been translated, but enough of it has. And then you also, some of it goes way back before Islam, way before Christianity. We go to Egypt and the hermeneutics, right? Or we go to the pre-Socratics, and also India. So this is I can see why he said you don't want to get started on that one. That one could take you a long time. But but again, that's not the highest priority right now for most people. It's kind of a byway at the moment. Now later you may find it interesting. Mathematicians do. I just ordered a book because it was recommended by somebody that I respect on what's called sacred geometry. And I looked at a preview of it, and it didn't look like the New Age books. I mean, it didn't have, elves and fairies and rainbows all over the place. It looked like more like a mathematician's book. And so I have high hopes for it. I don't know. But see, a lot of these things are destroyed by cultural first neglect and then abuse. And so that's a problem, but there's hope. All right, there's hope. Christianity, man, when they kicked the Muslims out of Spain after Spain had run it for 700, 800 years. They tried to, the church pretty much tried to stamp out all of that stuff. But they did the same thing to Christian mysticism, right? They did the same thing to a lot of Neoplatonics, even though they owe a huge debt to Plato and Plotinus and people like that. So there was an active, program of destroying these heritages and then pretend it comes from you, right? The Kabbalah, for example, what is it, the Jewish one, the Kabbalah? I think it is.
Yeah.
It's 10th century. I didn't know that. I thought that thing was much older than that. But it's 10th century. So it has roots too. And so all of these things are open for study. But this is not the study of self-development. This is more the study of the history of I don't know there's not a name for it, which is fine. There shouldn't be a name for it. And the names that have been applied to it are basically pejoratives. And so we'll leave it unnamed. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Sacred geometry, what the hell does that mean? Sacred geometry. But it does mean something. And the roots are sacred. And the roots are deep, deep, deep. But it's become a pejorative. Have you noticed that if you say the word God, or if you say the word Jesus or Christian or mystical or mystic, those things are like basically insults in academia. Those are pejoratives.
Well, is in Islamic academia as well?
I don't know enough about current Islamic academia, but I doubt it since they translated the Latin texts and the and the Egyptian texts, or what there was of them, and a lot of the Socratics and the pre-Socratics. So I don't think they're going to take themselves out of the picture. They may do the opposite and try and get rid of the Christian contribution. As a matter of fact, that's more likely than not. But I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's kind of cultural human nature, or human cultural nature. But maybe we can overcome that now that we have the internet, and we have, instant communication, and we have dissemination of all the world's knowledge at your fingertips. It's extraordinary time of possibility for us. And we just have to keep from wiping ourselves out.
Well, easier said than done.
We'll see. Something will survive. There's, what covers a lot of this, but it's a long read and it's difficult, is a beautiful book which I did not expect, called A Canticle for Leibowitz, a science fiction book, and not a very popular one, and not very well known, except among some people. And this thing is like one of the greatest treatises on the earthly church, and the whole construct of religion, because religion goes wonky, predictably, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the answer is not just religion, right? Or religion has a very important function, and without it, we wouldn't have the Socratic texts, for God's sake. Right, and the monks, in Ireland, and the ones in France, and everybody else, they did a huge service to humankind by preserving these things before the printing press, right? And so, the world is very complex, and this is where doing good and not doing good. I'm sure all these guys thought they were doing good by burning these books, because they weren't, they weren't in from the Christian. They were full of non-Christian doctrine, or they were full of Gnostic heresies.
Right.
And so that's where, people go off half-cocked, and they think they're doing good. They think they go to rescue a tribe in the South Pacific, and they give them all smallpox, right? I don't mean to laugh, but that's what happens all the time, right? They think they're making vaccines and bioweapons at the same time, and they never really, I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't go into that, but you know, a lot of mistakes get made by well-meaning people. Let me just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We can do one more.
Yeah, I have one more, and it actually relates. So, how then can one learn the ultimate consequences of one's actions? It seems way too complex to be able to understand the implications of one of your actions.
There's an assumption in your question, which is forgivable but should be pointed out.
Okay.
And that is that one can know and then understand the ultimate consequences of an action. And I think that needs to be looked at as a first step in answering that. Can it be answered?
So I've looked at this is one of the ones that I've been looking at for like multiple years, and I haven't convincingly come to a conclusion that I could know the ultimate consequences of one of my actions, to be good or bad. To like, there are some things that I do that feel, or what I can see their results being a lot more conducive to everybody's health and happiness than other things which I have done, which seem pretty convincingly not conducive to everybody's health and happiness. But the second, third, fourth order consequences of those things, I'm one, frequently proved wrong about my initial judgment, and two, they get so far out, and so there's so many, I guess butterfly effect is the word, that I just can't, it's hard for me to say that I know where one of my actions leads.
What this reminds me of is something that Rumi said famously. There's a field beyond good and bad. Meet me there. Do you see that? And so in order to meet me there, though, you have to elevate consciousness, because you wouldn't be able to understand the answer. Right? You can't understand the answer to some questions until you're past certain frankly, cognitive errors.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's not to be nihilist. It's not nihilistic at all. Rumi was not a nihilist. But I think he said it as better than anyone else. There's a field beyond good and bad. Meet me there. And so just to think about that. Let it percolate. Let it sit there. Let it do whatever it's going to do. But remember it if you can. And also, the Tao Te Ching is very good about this.
Okay.
And also Jesus, judge not lest you be judged. That's, one way of framing one facet of it. Or Muhammad, my back has been broken by pious men. So one of the ways that this work works is that these little pieces start to fall together, and then all of a sudden, it's one day you go, oh, aha, it makes sense. And it does make sense. It makes perfect sense. It makes better sense than anything else. But it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes work. It takes effort and preparation. At first, it's effort, and then it's just joy.
Mm-hmm.
There's no effort in what I'm doing because there's not. What can I say? And that's been true for a while. So people, but you do have to make the initial investment. It's like everything else in this world, except for the beauty of nature, or your mother's love. So those things are free. not to the mother, not to the mother, but to the child. And so yeah, most everything else in this world requires effort. And if you're going to do well, you need to be sincere. And if you're really going to do really well, then you need to set your intent and know where you want to get. And that could be any number of places, right? Some are wiser than others. What did Elon tweet out in Hebrew? He tweeted something out in Hebrew that in translation it said wisdom, and then he uses more than sign twice.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom, more than money. I think it was an interchange with an Israeli.
Right.
I thought it was kind of cool because it's true.
Well,
and Elon understands that, I hope.
Yeah.
All of us should. But that doesn't mean you don't need money. I mean, you're not helping anybody by depending on them for your support, for your bread and roof.
Definitely.
So, okay. That's about what I could do on that.
Okay.
All right, good.
Good.